Part 2 Main Kampf. They continued running. Mary thought and she just ticked an option randomly. She ticked Berlin. Suddenly, the fog which appeared previously started appearing, and just like the last time, the environment disappeared with the fog and continued to be for some time, after which it vanished again. This time, they were again in a whole new different place. They were on a small garden. All around them were houses with a unique flag, the red background which contained a white filled circle in the center, on which was the symbol of swastika. At first they were confused as they clearly knew that they had taken Berlin, but they felt as though it was India due to the swastika symbol. But this symbol was a bit different, as it was a bit tilted towards the right. There was a speaker attached to a pole in front of a house. While they were wondering about the country they were in, a band of soldiers came patrolling around while singing the slogan, "Hail Führer" and "Hail Hitler." After hearing these slogans, they were frightened and became all white. They then ran to a shop and took a newspaper and checked the date. It was written 27th January 1943. This was Nazi Germany, and it was the height of the Holocaust era, and more importantly, World War II was going on. So the soldiers patrolling were actively also increased their attention to the Jews and any other groups who didn't belong to the perfect Aryan group. The four guys then began to walk slowly to escape from the sight of the soldiers. But the Nazis saw them and called them. The four ignored them and began to run away. The soldiers then began to chase them and eventually caught them. They then inquired them about their place and why they ran. But since they spoke in German, the kids couldn't comprehend it. And Samir then stepped front, signaling that he will talk. He then acted like a great English gentleman, as his knowledge about European diversity was the same as Americans about African diversity. He thought that they could understand English and so said, "Dear officers, you see, we are from India, but in the future. That is, our time is ahead of yours and we came to the past because of a boat." The soldiers, because they had been fighting the English, understood the language easily. He spoke and became very angry as he thought that these guys must be one of the American or British agents spying on them, and so without any hesitation caught them and pushed them into a jeep and took them to a camp. There they saw thousands of people crying due to harsh conditions, were kept hungry and were being forcibly tortured and then taken to a place where they were inhaled with poison gas and left to die. They gasped in horror as they thought that they would get the same fate as theirs. There, they saw a face walking away with whom they were very familiar with. That man had a small brush mustache and looked very strict with his eyes and had the Nazi symbol on his shoulders and wore a big commander cap. They instantly recognized him. He was the Führer, the most brutal and ruthless guy, Adolf Hitler. He had come here to keep a check on the prisoners, as to make sure that no one was escaping. The guards called Hitler and asked them the fate of these kids. The supreme leader, with a stern look, said nothing and gave a gesture and walked away in his jeep to go for the future planning of the war situation. The guards understood the gesture, that is, to send them to the concentration camp. The kids got horrified and pleaded them to leave them, but the guards didn't listen and threw them into the camp. Suddenly one of them started to faint. It was the effect of the poison gas which would soon kill them. Just then somebody came and knifed the guards' throats who were patrolling the prisoners, and freed some 100 prisoners until a huge battalion of them came along. The guys ran towards their lifesaver and called him. The person stopped them and shut them out and took them to a distant location. Mohini then asked, "I wanted to know who are you, and also to thank you for saving our lives or we would have perished." The guy said, "I am a Jewish rebel who belonged to a group of association whose main aim is to kill Hitler. We saw some of our friends here, so thought of attacking them to help them. By the way, who are you guys? Don't you..." Suddenly a huge firing was started by the Nazis, who came to know about the attack on the camp. They found the man and started shooting him. The man signaled the teens to run away. They then ran away. While running, Samir said, "Oh man, I was a huge admirer of Hitler as he had done a lot for the nation. Didn't know he and the Nazis were this ruthless." For which Vikram slapped Samir and said, "Never knew you would support a dictator. At least you got to know his true colors. That's okay. Oh look, a small manhole. Now I know it may sound very disgusting, but let's hide there. After all, there's no choice." The other three, reluctant at first, suddenly saw a huge swarm of planes were flying At first they were glad, as they found out from the soldiers who ran away were ranting on about Hitler declaring war on USA, that they were Americans. Apparently, after Japan attacked the Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Germany declared war against the USA. So, the Americans sent one of their 8 contingents of fighter planes to Europe in February 1942. Since then, these fighter planes were attacking the German and Japanese planes, and by this day they came to Germany. Now, however, the four lost their face of happiness, as they were so small to the pilots that they didn't know about the children there. So they dropped the first bomb. Don't worry, it's not the atom bomb, just one of the regular missiles they dropped in the war, on Deutschland. By then the four understood, and so they went inside the manhole, which was very deep, and closed the manhole cap with great force. By then they were so down that the bombs didn't affect them. They were feeling so shocked, with the heartbeats rising, as they could hear people screaming, dogs barking out of fear. The destruction was very dreadful. Suddenly, they remembered something. The 30 minutes were up. So now, it was Mohini's chance. A chit had already popped up. The options were Tokyo, Manchester, Tehran, Chittagong. So now, with which option will Mohini choose? To be continued.